Hello world, it's Maria Kefalogianni here, present center psychotherapist, a spiritual guide and an ally into those of you who are undergoing a deep spiritual transformation, like so many of us in our stage of our human consciousness evolution. I've been resisting to come and tell my full story. I have had one interview before where I mentioned part of my story based on where I was in my journey, and the time has come. The time has come, given where I am right now, where the abiding has deepened enough, so the new mind that is emerging, is ready to realign. Because I feel I've lost my linearity for a while now. There's so much to talk about the journey of awakening, and I want to start by saying this is something that fulfills a need in me, where I am in my journey. Take from this whatever resonates and leave all the rest. Please don't hand any power to my words. Trust in your gut. You will know if I share something that resonates in your body. It will be like a deep-seated hallelujah, like it was for me when I was in the depths of despair and I would read something that was like a swimming wing. But let me start by how it all started. And of course, from this place, it's really difficult to find landmarks in time, because we are timeless awareness. Yeah. I was always a very sensitive child, very open child to that liminality, an undiagnosed neurodivergent child, a porous, and I would always experience in my body like a body fret, like a body trembling. And looking back, it was a trembling and the tremor of longing for this truth. I always had as a child this very strange kind of longing and desire, an obsession almost, to discover truth. In my school years, I remember I used to be called the "it depends" child. People would ask me questions and I would very naturally say, it depends. I was very anchored in that liminality and of the grayness of our world, which is that non-dual place and location, which is beyond the binary and the dualistic thinking. I am also going to share, for first time perhaps in one of my videos, that one of the, we can call them prophetic visions, that was offered to me. I must have been very young. I struggle to recall how old I was, and memory is taking a different form right now. It's very much plugged in the here and now, but very young, I was given the message that I will die in my mid-30s. And bizarrely, this is something that never caused any fear, although death anxiety has been and had been something recurring in my life, which from the place where I am now is wisdom knocking on the door for that deep sense of freedom. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the deep, profound shift in my perception of identity, who I perceive myself to be, happened in 2019. There was a lot of glimpses and foretaste before then, and as a child, so many memories of even walking on the street and looking at my feet and having the thought, who is here? Who is walking? I'm not here. Or I remember playing with my sister and staring each other in the eyes, so much so that her whole face was becoming one with my face, and her eye, my eye, and both we would burst in hysterical laughter, and so many other more. But in 2019, as I said, I left Crete. I left my island. I'm from Crete. And I take a lot of pride in my lineage, which is all linking to who I've become and who I'm weaved to be. A lineage of mothers, seamstresses, and loomers and shepherds, my father's lineage. And I've always wondered why I'm going abroad, but always having a sense of knowing that there is a reason. So as a child growing up, I was so in tune with my intuition. And I consider that a great blessing. And I had a lot of physical abuse growing up and a lot of wounding. I had my own chunk bag of wounding. But somehow I always had the capacity to connect with the truth in other people, the sense of love that the people didn't know. That's why they were misusing their power over me. So in some ways, I was somehow forced to connect with this greater intelligence within me, outside of me. I could feel things very deeply. I would go into a room and I would pick up the energies, things that I couldn't understand back then. But now looking back, it makes total sense. Okay, the porosity of being. So I went for my Erasmus, and then when I came back, it was very clear on a bodily level that I needed to leave home. So this existential tremor began to emerge again. I was early 20s. And I applied to come to do my MSc in counseling psychology in England, 2007. So I won't forget it. The letter arrived on a Friday. And I had to be here coming Wednesday because of timelines. It was very last minute. It was very last minute, interestingly, very tuned into the here and now. And I was in a relationship at the time, and I said to my boyfriend, I can't explain this, but I must go out there to meet myself. All logic says no, don't go. There's no time, leave it, give it time. But my gut, my intuition says I need to go to meet myself. And it's very moving to recall that, because that's what we long. We long to taste what we've always known from a very deep experiential lens. I came here, did my master's in counseling and psychotherapy, became a counselor. And a boyfriend introduced me to self-inquiry during my psychotherapy training, which I find fascinating, the wisdom of grace in my journey and in everybody's journey, in your journey too, if we learn to really, truly look within. And so what was happening is this empty, enough, porous, very loose sense of self. As a neurodivergent person, it's very common to have a looser sense of self, not as solid, was somehow restructuring into an identity of a psychotherapist, whilst at the same time I was practicing self-inquiry, which is the direct path of arriving at the true sense of who we are, through the question, who am I? So he would introduce me to Muji, and I would spend times on my sofa, on my settee. My partner would go out working, and I would have my popcorn, and I would get melting moments, but I had zero concept of what that was about, what was happening to me. It felt nice. I let go. I've always had this blessing looking back, that I was never attached or grasping. There wasn't an awful lot of grasping energy in my story for some reason. So I would listen to Muji, and I would just either laugh hysterically at sometimes. So there was a lot of foretastes of awakening. And somehow kept returning to watching these videos. And then the moment came where there was a very strong impulse. I have had my first child, and there's so many stories around the conception, and the soul conception of my first child. In my awakening story, I'm really passionate, especially to support now, after I've integrated it enough into my story, yet hollowed from the story that I've always been. Mothers, particular, and women. And that seems to have been a common archetypal energy and force surrounding me. I'll talk about that maybe in another video if you'd like to hear. It's a beautiful story. And I felt the urge. It was very clear. Grace's whispers in me. You've got to go on a retreat to meet Muji. That was my first retreat ever. In 2019. I was 35. Mid-30s. And on the retreat, it happened. I call it the Big Bang that shifted my world upside down. And the moment of awakening fundamentally to our sense of identity is different to having glimpses. And people can have strong glimpses. But if you experience this fundamental shift into the essence of who you are, everything changes after that. And that's the first stage as well. It's not, oh, we're done. This is a journey to infinity. This is a journey in God, as God, forever unfolding and embodying it deeper and deeper through our flesh and bones. I had slowed down so much so that I could observe a single thought the moment it would emerge back into form and fall back into that silence. And there was a point where it all imploded. Time collapsed. Location collapsed. And I had an influx of memories, like in what felt like seconds, coming through as a child. And it became so clear that I've always been here. Not as a separate identity, but something so much faster than this. I have always been here as this consciousness bringing me home. And it's very moving to talk about that because it's profound. It was a profound shift. I had no concept for it at the time. It took me years to begin to recognize and find the words for it. And the process that continued, I'll talk a little bit about what happened after. There was tears of joy and laughter at the absurdity of it all, and awe and heart-warmed tears. I am home. I'm free. What have I been looking? I remember coming back from the retreat, and I went through a period, very short again, of wanting to tell people, wanting to really grasp and tell people what actually happened. And I remember talking to my husband and to colleagues, and colleagues feeding back, said, it sounds like you're more accepting of yourself. I was like, this is not touching it. This is not about acceptance. This is far deeper. It's radical beingness. And I recall I can't remember who said it, that it's like we spend life knocking on a door only to realize that we've been knocking from the inside. I'm not sure if it was Rumi that said that. That's exactly what it was for me. I've been knocking from the inside. Always been here. Now, I forgot to mention that before June 2019, in January 2019, again, no concept. I had a Kundalini. Again, I'm not sure if it was activation or awakening, and I never really bothered. I have this rebel energy in me. It's like, Muji is not my teacher. I never bothered to call him a teacher. Like, always skeptical. And that's the academic side of my brain, the skepticism that I really, really hope you don't throw the baby out of the bathwater. it's useful until it isn't, like in my case. So if it's there, honor it. Yeah, just accept it. And Kundalini rose up and came back down, and it threw me on the floor. It was very potent and very strong. And that's another video, because that opened up a different kind of capacities, telepathy, psychic skills, began the porousness, my voice totally freed through the Kundalini awakening. I had a compelling urge to sing. Interestingly, how then that led me to become a sound healer with a voice, and voice is still very important for me. It's the way through Grace is expressing herself, the poetry and Shruti singing, and it's just so gorgeous. This journey is really rough, and we need somebody to support us, and often people do need the right support so that you can cultivate the gifts given and gifted to you. So that's what happened, and I remember singing outside on the street in Portugal with my friend Melissa, and just joyful, blissful. And I remember coming out thinking, is that it? Is this it? So simple. And yet we cannot grasp this intellectually. We just cannot. I call this grace. And in my journey, I didn't seek it, at least consciously. I wasn't seeking for some kind of enlightenment. Things were happening and I didn't even have an idea of what were happening. But something in me knew. And this is the way that we tend to seek, even if that's with our gut, with our heart, with our intuition. And after that, of course, and many people's experience relate to that, a deep, dark night of the soul ensued. I was pregnant at the time. I felt pregnant in, awakening happened in May, June, and then September, December, I felt pregnant. And then lockdown was happening shortly after that, and it was coming along, which was really great for me because I could slow down and I could really enjoy the silence. Because what started to happen was all of the shadow material that I hadn't worked through in myself began to come to the surface. I could say I touched quite deeply a place of spiritual emergency, right? But I was very blessed that I had the training of a psychotherapist to have enough grounding, and alongside with the clarity that was gifted on my journey and the solidifying of the inner voice and conviction of truth in me to actually hold me sane. Yeah, some people don't have that grounding, and it can be really destabilizing and disorienting. And people can get lost into chasing circles of transcendence, but truly, we're gifted this so that we bring it in this world. And hence why I'm doing what I'm doing, to help navigate that middle path. And I would say I'm not a teacher. I don't see myself as a teacher. I cringe at the use of that word a lot. I can't explain why. But I'm here as an ally, as a guide. I'm here to meet you exactly where you are. I'm not here to awaken you unless you come to me and you're open and ripe. And that's what needs to be weaved. And of course, you know, when you come in, you're a mirror to where I am. So a deep dark night of the soul, I was stripped to my bare being. I couldn't do much. And somehow that was having an outside effect on my son, who were beginning the process of neurodivergent diagnosis. I got my neurodivergent diagnosis during this time. So we can see how divinely perfect everything is, as I was being unraveling to a deeper unmasking in my being. Yeah. And then there was a lot of glimpses of oneness in that descent, and also glimpses of appreciating the beauty of life, the rays of the golden sun. And here is the interesting thing. I had reached so much depth in that despair. I was pregnant and suicidal. And I recall one of which I've shared in another interview, one of the very poignant moments was me actually grabbing a cigarette to smoke at the back of my house and noticing these thoughts come by and sort of wanting to flee, right? Wanting to flee that pain, to flee the human instinct. And then I heard the voice again. I heard the graces, wisdom, whispers saying, could call it the voice of God, whatever. I don't care how you want to call it. The voice of my intuition, which I always listen, but somehow it solidified in that descent, which said, you're purifying from the inside. Simply trust. And I knew in that descent that I was healed. I still put the things in place and sought support, right? And I shared what I need to share, which was a deeper surrendering in my vulnerability as well as a psychotherapist, right? Don't get me started with that. Psychotherapists hide behind their traumas. Well, all of that burst from me. And that sense of separation, of hiding behind a psychotherapy role and my client, has deeply dissolved. I see me everywhere. So that happened. And then what emerged from that journey is things had fallen away. All that sense of anxiety just fallen away. There was a period, and then that goes in loops and different kind of, for me, it's like a looping into abiding deeper and deeper in that thing. And some people call that there's different ways to awaken on the mind level. So what happened to me was I feel a combination of mind and heart, because there was a lot of foretastes before about the heart and since childhood. And then at the gut level, which some call it the Brahman shift, I couldn't be bothered to remember any of that. So I've never bothered with labels. Only now I'm returned to a kind of place where labels and concepts somehow help me rediscover my ground. Because I feel that no self shift has really led me to that free fall. I was saying to friends, I feel like I'm free falling. I'm walking, but I'm walking kind of horizontally into a timeless dimension. So that's what happened totally. And then paradoxically, all my clients started shifting. All my clients that I would, people would then come to me, even before even advertising that was my journey, before I even admit to myself that I'm here to support people on this journey of awakening. People will reach out with this. And looking back now, I remember people choosing to come to me because I looked very spiritual. Even the word spiritual was not in my vocabulary. That was before the shift, well before the shift. I'm coming to you because you're very spiritual. And I would remember thinking, what do they mean? Is it because I have a picture in front of a tree? So empty of concept. And that was a gift in my case, because I have danced with the wound of our unworthiness and the energy of doubt very much in my life. And I do have an analytical mind, right? I am also a psychotherapy trainer and supervisor, training therapists and supervisors of therapists. And I love the precision, have an analytical edge to me. So, of course, looking back, Grace was gifting me experiences before any concepts, because my mind would be lost in finding out anything and everything about it. It doesn't mean that I didn't go on to read and understand when the first shift happened. What the heck was that about? And that was before my descent into the dark night of the soul, because after that, all need for even CPD trainings as a psychotherapist professional, that we have to do CPD, continuous professional development, which is a kind of concept that it feels so absurd in my head right now, because we're forever growing and we're forever here. We all fell away. So a complete sense of utter completion. It didn't mean that I didn't have shadow work and family stuff that kept coming. We're humans, and one of my passions are to truly put the human at the center of what it is. Letting it marinate in the knowing that we're also something beyond our limited sense of identity. After that, life is unfolding in the most mysterious, beautiful, miraculous ways. The synchronicities. I recall a phase where, synchronicities would happen. I would have a little notebook, write them down to not forget, because I used to forget. Life seeks itself out. Consciousness seeks itself out. We are tasting our own nectar, moment to moment. So life is abundant in synchronicities now. It is the norm. The unity consciousness that for a while appeared as part of the byproduct of this shift feels it's integrated enough now, and I look at the tree, I feel the tree in me. And that doesn't mean that it's something that it's here all the time, but there's something here all the time that can I relate, and that is you, me, as undefiable, untamable, alive awareness seeping through your flesh and bones. And and a lot of my journey is around motherhood. My first birth was ecstatic. I reached a transcendental place of that was a big foreplay, actually, before the proper awakening. A big foreplay, foretaste, felt like foreplay, before the eros with spirit, the union. And I was in bliss. Looking back, it was a samadhi period that I never knew that that's what it was. But for a whole month, I was swimming in ecstatic bliss and samadhi and the most joyful. And it was a home birth, which really helped. And it's funny because the second birth, which coincided, see how beautifully Grace is kind of weaving us into our lives in such a precise way. During my second birth, which was the descent in the dark night of the soul, or what I love to call the dark goddess, and the solidifying of that inner voice, my death, my symbolic death, right, 35. It was also a very traumatic period of parenting and pregnancy, right? So my shell cracked, and that has to happen. It's a stage that it's a necessary part of our blossoming and emergence, just like a seed cracks, trusting that the mud of earth, the soil, will fertilize its cracking into a blossoming flower. And there is no shortcuts, there is no rushing of this process. Our process of emergence has her own unique pace. The third birth was coincided with my spiritual as a mirroring back part of my journey of surrender, which is the stage where the decision maker and the remnants of control in life and the one who decides collapse. Because when we awaken at mind level, at that profound way, there are still remnants of ego identity as we've known it before. And the more we abide into that ground of being, the kind of, it's almost like when you shake a bottle and there is the glitter bottle, and the glitter starts to sort of integrate back into our seat of being, as my poem says, our seat of prayer. And that surrender baby was got another lovely story, which probably another video, but that's what broke me totally open into abiding into effortless life of flow. And it's still unfolding in terms of where I am with life and what life wants to communicate through me. Because the remnants of the ego mind might still resist, but there comes a point to the journey of this surrender that the mind has no grasp. It's trying, but there's no ground because the crown is cracked, so there's nowhere to hold on to, so it just collapses back on its own self and in the ground of being. Is that it? Yeah, forgot to say, in that descent, the gift that was revealed again was through words, through poems. I have got 2 or 3 collections of mystic poetry that just poured in, utterly complete and raw, and with not even editing. I still haven't published them, but they are, now that the mind is reorienting back into a new sense of structure from a deeper lens and orientation to life, I'm hoping, don't know, that they will form at their own time and get out to the world. Mystic poetry, which is an embodied, and again, it was another moment from that timeless now, because with my first child, I had a dream that I was spitting butterflies, and I could never explain that dream. So this kind of sums up. There's lots of other lovely stories in between, too many to even begin articulating. I'm fascinated by deepening in this reality, which is like a diamond. It's like a holograph, a multifaceted reality. And especially when it comes to the contemplative traditions, we are noticing and witnessing a shift. And I always said that we're moving away from the transcendental, pure transcendental traditions into more embodied, fleshed out traditions in navigating a spiritual awakening. And I guess that's my mission in life, to do that in any corner of my life, starting from my family, my children. Grace, again, compelled to create 3 communities, where one is about neurodivergent, and I have so much to say about neurodivergence and spiritual awakening, because we are sensitive as we are, and if you sprinkle a spiritual awakening, it can get really intense, guys. And if you're watching this video and you resonate with that and you want to know more, let me know. I can talk a lot about a lot of things about that. A parent community of how do we approach parenting from this lens. And, and the community specifically for non-dual guides and coaches and psychotherapists who have had a deep shift and they would like to integrate science and spirituality are not separate. They're part of the one ground. And it takes more of us to work together and collaborate to bridge that apparent gap. I'm noticing there is a calming down of the energy that wanted to come in to voice my journey. If you have any specific questions, I'd love to answer them for you. I'm holding occasionally an online sangha where we meet to explore our journeys together. I am a busy mom, so I'm very, very protective of time, although Spirit has stretched me far wide. But you can subscribe on my website. I'll put the links below if you wanted to be kept informed. This seems to be where life wants to lead me. I'm totally and utterly at the service of your flow. And I fully trust that whatever you are meant to discover, that you will be revealed. May you surrender to this inner knowing. May you trust your beating heart's wisdom to follow your path. May you abide. May you abide in this love that you are, so you can ripple to the world from that deeper place. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. And I wish you all the best.